Obviously, the big issue or the big talking points of this week revolve all around the governor's State of the State and her budget that she rolled out this session. We obviously, as we said a few days ago, are very concerned that the governor has decided to shift the burden of paying for core services like education, healthcare, and public safety away from folks who can best afford it to folks who can least afford it, like middle class and lower middle class families. When she offered up $900 million worth of tax increases, we understood it was her way of saying she realizes we have a revenue problem, which was contrary to what she said the last several years. She actually admitted we have a revenue problem, so we are happy to see that she's come to our side and is willing to accept the fact that we have a revenue problem. But the concern is the way she wants to raise revenues is not what we believe is the best way forward for Oklahoma citizens. To potentially raise taxes on farmers and ranchers in order to pay for public schools, to potentially raise taxes on cigarettes, which really is just a diminishing tax source, to raise taxes potentially on haircuts and doctor's visits for senior citizens, we think is just the wrong approach. And so what you'll see our caucus do in the coming weeks and months is to try to work with the governor and Republican leaders across the aisle to form a broad-based tax structure. While there may be some proposals that we're not necessarily diametrically opposed to, we think that any proposal that does not include rolling back this fiscally irresponsible tax cut that took effect in January and stopping the next tax cut trigger that should take effect in the next year or two is an inappropriate proposal. A broad-based tax structure must include all of those aspects. We redouble our call today, as we did a few days ago, for all House Republicans, especially those House Republicans in rural Oklahoma, to join with us to say so publicly that they stand with House Democrats and the Oklahoma Farm Bureau in a bipartisan effort to push back on forced school consolidation, which is essentially what the governor offered up in her State of the State as a way to balance the budget on the backs of rural families. We think that would be a death knell to many small towns throughout the state of Oklahoma. And if we would just get our tax policy right, we wouldn't have to put small town communities in rural Oklahoma in the crosshairs. And so we so far, the silence from House Republican members, especially those rural members, has been deafening, and we wait for them to join with us to send the message to Governor Fallon that her plan has bipartisan opposition and that we need to find another solution for the problems facing our public schools. My friend, and he truly is my friend, Senator Greg Treat, offered up a proposal to eliminate pre-K education in Oklahoma, one of the truly popular highlights in our public school system. Senator Treat is now asking that we eliminate pre-K as a way to save money. We believe that the few dollars that he may see in savings will be offset by the cost of having young children not receive the education that they need to make Oklahoma a better place. With cigarette tax, service tax, sales tax exemptions that she's all wanting to roll back, all of that is an increase in taxes. And then she's got a few $100 million of transferring money from certain agencies into the General Revenue Fund. Make no mistake about it, the business community in Oklahoma who pays those particular fees for a particular service, it's a fee if the money that they're paying goes for that particular service. But the moment in which they say, well, half that fee will pay for the service, then the other half of the fee will get redirected to go be spent on something else in the public sector, that is a new tax on the business community. And so as they sweep those funds, it's in essence a tax on the business community. If the fees that are being collected are more than what are necessary to deliver those services, then they need to reduce those fees on the business community, not continue to overcharge them just so they can use it to backfill their tax cut holes. If you're just going to raise taxes on smokers in Oklahoma while you cut taxes for wealthy folks, well, we're against that. But if the governor came to us and said, here's our proposal, we'll stop the income tax cut from taking effect in the next year or so. We'll roll back the income tax cut that just took effect. That saves $150 to $200 million. Now let's talk about some other proposals. Let's find some exemptions that could come off the books that aren't as effective as they otherwise need to be. They don't hurt middle class families. And then we could find a way to cobble together a real tax reform package. But what the governor's doing is saying, well, we're just going to cut taxes on the wealthy and shift that burden directly over to middle class families. And so as long as she's going to give us that approach, she'll find opposition from us. I thought the governor was really missed an opportunity. She really opened herself up for some pretty sharp criticism from us, as well as from members on her side of the aisle, when she simply says we want to put a tax on services and we're looking at eliminating some of the $8 billion in sales tax exemptions. By not delineating exactly what she wanted to discuss, what she in essence did is put everything on the table. So that means when you're talking about sales tax exemptions, we have sales tax exemptions for farm implements, for feed, to hopefully help make sure that cattle and beef prices and milk prices stay low for our middle class families. Well, all of that's in the crosshairs now. Is that what she's talking about? She didn't let us know. When she talks about services, she wants to put a fee on services. Most people, when they hear that, that means barbershops, doctor's visits, lawyer's visits. You go down the list, right? If you have somebody come out and put in an air conditioner at your house, now they're going to charge you a tax on that. All of those services are potentially eligible to be taxed under her plan, and because she didn't delineate which one she wants, she's open to be criticized for potentially taxing all of those. We do want to help solve the problem, but the issue is this. We've said for the last several years, part of the solution is to stop digging our way deeper and deeper into the hole with income tax cuts that are fiscally irresponsible. We said you've got to stop the income tax cut from taking effect this January, stop the next trigger. Republicans in the House and the governor said, no, we can't do that. And so where our position is this: while there may be certain tax credits that should come off the books, or there may be certain sales tax exemptions potentially that could come off the books, we're willing to discuss that, but we're not willing to discuss that in the manner in which the governor is currently discussing it, as if to say the income tax cuts for the wealthiest of Oklahomans are not on the table, but sales tax exemptions and services taxes on middle class and lower middle class families are. And so until she comes to the table, or Earl Sears and Speaker Hickman, Pro Tem Bingman, and Senator Jolly, until they come to the table and admit that the income tax cuts that helped put us in this mess should be back on the table as an overall tax policy reform, then you'll see our efforts pushing back against any efforts to raise taxes on middle class families. The fiscally irresponsible tax cut decisions and the explosion of tax credits and giveaways to the wealthiest corporations in Oklahoma and in the world have now put us in a situation in which the governor is saying we're going to force school consolidation. That should not be the discussion. The discussion should be, we've got the money to fund education appropriately, but are those particular schools offering up the services that are appropriate, necessary, and sufficient for those local communities? Many Republicans on the other side want to consolidate just to save money. That's their whole purpose. And from our perspective, the measuring stick by which we determine whether consolidation is good or not is this: does consolidation offer better services to the customers of Oklahoma, which in that case would be the students and the parents? It's not a matter of whether it saves money. That's an ancillary benefit, and we appreciate that. But if you just go consolidate for the sake of consolidation and offer poor services to the students and the people in those communities by making them take hour-long bus rides, well, then what have you really accomplished? By saving a few dollars, you've actually given the citizens of Oklahoma, our customers, folks who we're supposed to support and help make their lives better, you made life tougher on them. Because under the plan now, and I'll use Wagner County, for example, because we've got my good friend, Representative Wade Russolo, who lives in OK, Oklahoma. There's about 400 kids that go to the OK public schools. If we forced consolidation and administrative consolidation and told those parents in OK that they no longer get to vote for a school board that takes care of OK Public Schools, but instead the school board that's going to govern OK Public Schools is going to be in Wagner County. It's going to be Wagner Public Schools. Well, now all of a sudden the school board, the people who vote for those folks don't live in OK. They don't have an interest in OK anymore, and now they will vote to close that school down to save whatever money that they think is important. And so what you've done is eliminated local control, which will ultimately allow people that don't live in that local community to close that school, and we don't believe that type of forced consolidation is good for rural Oklahoma. I think there's virtually no chance that the teachers in the state of Oklahoma are going to see any significant pay raise. Matter of fact, what they ought to be worried about is not whether or not they're going to get a pay raise, but whether or not their benefits are going to be cut, because there's already proposals floating in both legislatures that would roll back their benefit allowance or cap their benefit allowance for their health insurance, which over time would actually eat up whatever increase in salary they might get. That should be the big issue. They should also stay focused on voucher programs that would take more money out of their classrooms and thus make it harder to pay for those teachers. Remember, teachers came here in droves, thousands. There were 25,000 of them that came just a couple of years ago, another 15 or 20 that came the following year. They've been cutting education budgets each year for 5 years. And despite the rally, despite people coming from all over the state saying, help us, not one time did Senator Holt or Governor Fallin or anybody else offer up a legitimate pay raise plan. When oil was $100 a barrel, there was no offer to raise teacher pay. But then as soon as they lose 2 Republican seats to Democrats in the House and the Senate, and they realize that people, regardless of party affiliation, are now frustrated with their fiscal mismanagement of the public schools, and the election's 10 months away. Now they've all come to Jesus on the issue, and they want to at least throw that out there as a potential, so that way they could at least go home the election cycle and say, well, I know the pay raise didn't happen, but we tried. I think the teachers of Oklahoma are smart enough to look at the last 5 years and realize that they're not going to be played with these cheap political partisan tricks. We could have not cut the income tax, could have not given away the farm on tax credits and exemptions, and could have not undercut our economy, our schools and healthcare by creating an unbelievably low gross production tax. And thus, when the oil boom hit, we as a state could have benefited from it, not just the oil companies. We didn't do that. And so now when oil's $30 a barrel, we're cutting even deeper than we already did. It's that series of fiscally irresponsible decisions over 5 or 6, 7 years that have put us here. If you roll back the income tax cut that just took effect in January, that's the equivalent of the brand new cigarette tax. And so if you really were serious about finding $150, $160 million to put into teacher pay, we could have just not cut the income tax in January, and you'd have that money to be able to pay for teacher pay raises. Instead, they cut taxes and on income taxes, and they're saying, well, to make up for it, literally, it's almost a dollar for dollar equivalent. To make up for their fiscally irresponsible income tax cuts, they want to raise cigarette taxes on smokers and then tie that to a teacher pay raise. Well, that over time is just a diminishing return, because as more folks quit smoking, fewer dollars will come in, and so you're trying to tie a long-term recurring revenue requirement of teacher pay raises to something that will dwindle over time. That's fiscally irresponsible.